The American people are angry not just at government, at Wall Street, many of our nation's institutions. That's the view expressed in the new book, What Americans Really Want, Really. Its author is Frank Luntz. He joins us here now. Good to have you with us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start. You surveyed 6,000 Americans. You discovered 72% agree with this statement. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. It seems I've heard that somewhere before. Was it Patty Chayefsky
yes, the
writing network? So what are Americans so upset about?
They're mad at government because it's not accountable. They're mad at Wall Street because there's no respect for shareholders and employees. They're mad, quite frankly, at Hollywood, and I was watching that Roman Polanski segment. That's going to drive people nuts because there's no civility there. And so they look at these institutions and these individuals whom they trusted, and they're not delivering for them what they're supposed to.
You know, each one of those instances, I think to myself, as you say that, each one of those things is in the control of the American public. We don't have to buy the things we do. We don't have to support the institutions we do. We don't have to continue to send back by a 96% the incumbents to office.
But they feel powerless. The problem is you've got elected officials who are canceling town hall meetings because they don't want to get yelled at. It should be exactly the opposite approach. The elected officials should say, okay, I know you're angry. I'm going to sit for the next 2 hours, 3 hours. If a politician wants to get reelected, they should say, I'm going to stay here until the very last person has had their say. But these elected officials won't do it. They don't want to be challenged. And that's why the American people are so ticked off.
They're arrogant, they're entitled, and we're talking about both political parties, not one.
They're angry at both of them because they think that both of them aren't listening. And what makes them most angry? Wasteful Washington spending.
You also ask, if you had the power, which three problems or issues would you fix first? And here, and if we've got this, I'd like to see it so everybody can see it. 31% restoring national economic stability. 31% restoring values and morality to society. 29% preventing terrorism. 3% building roads, bridges, and highways.
There's a lot in between, of course.
There are a lot in between, but I can't help but think that building roads, bridges, and highways could be tied in with restoring national economic stability as well. Well, what does that really tell us?
It tells us that the morality part of it I thought was fascinating. And there's a chapter in this book about the importance of religion and spirituality. And I'll tell you something. The more likely you are to pray and to attend church or synagogue, the happier you are, the healthier you are, the closer you are to your family, the more optimistic you are about the future, the more you like your job. There's a direct correlation between spirituality and life satisfaction. And yet you don't see that in day-to-day life.
Yeah. And it's interesting because you're certainly not the only pollster who has revealed that. As a matter of fact, it's validated and corroborated in poll after poll on marriage, on religion, and those who are happily married and those involved in their religion far healthier and living more satisfying lives. But those things tend to be ignored, at least in the national media.
And that's the issue, is that they are ignored. And so the public now says, if I don't speak up and yell, then I'm not heard. And that's the issue. It's not the issue of listening. They want to be heard.
And to be heard, right now, we watch people being heard in those national town hall meetings all across the country. Where does health care rank in your research here?
Healthcare has risen as an issue. It was not that high back in January. It's risen as an issue because that's all they've focused on. And yet the American people are asking two simple questions. How can you vote on legislation that you haven't read? And how can you vote on legislation that we know nothing about? You're affecting my life here. This is not buying a car or buying a television set. This is my life, my parents' life, my children's life. And you're telling me that you're going to make these radical changes to it, tax policy, budget policy, and just policy on health care, and you don't even know what's in the bill?
Well, I mean, let's be very clear. They don't know what's in the bill. They don't know what it'll cost. There have not been public hearings because the public hasn't been heard to this point, and the public wants to hear what the facts are, as you say. Frank Luntz, we appreciate you being here.
And that's what the public is looking for, answers.
And what I know the public is looking for is what Americans really want. Really.